Okay, it's time to go ahead and get started. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today for this tap-in webinar. I know we're all very busy, so we'll get right to it. Today's conference is going to be focused on the 8 laws of daily focus for double-digit profitability that we talked about in the super meeting in San Diego. There were some really fantastic keys, and these can be found on the website. Some of the things that we're focused on, what I've done with these is break these down on a call-by-call basis so that we can drill into each one of these as to how it relates to service management. Now, not every person on these calls is a service manager. Some of us are office managers, dispatchers, possibly even technicians. So I want you to look at this broadly and think about how it applies to me and how I can apply this and what this means for my business, okay? And we've got a relatively small group today, so I would encourage participation. So everyone is muted as we start this. However, I can unmute you at certain points. I welcome questions and interaction as much as possible, so please feel free. On your control panel on the right side of your computer, you can also raise your hand. You've got a function where you can ask a question or type in a chat. So by all means, please be interactive. Perfect. Okay. Did I see a hand raised? Thought I did. Okay, we're just testing. All right. These are the 8 steps to building double-digit profitability that was rolled out in the super meeting. Work the model, win the day, communicate in rhythm. And on the last tap-in, I talked about dispatched achieving the call goal. So now we're going to talk about, as a service manager, from a service manager's point of view, how do we maximize those opportunities, and what does that mean for us? So let's start by defining the rules of the dispatcher, the dispatch manager, and the service manager. We're going to break down each one of those individually. So what is the role of the DSR? And another distinction I want to make is I know that many of our businesses, these are not different people. What we coach to in our CSR class and our dispatch class now is that these really should be separate functions as much as possible. But I also understand the reality of it is in many of our businesses, these are one and the same people. You know, there's not always a dispatch manager. There's not always a dispatcher, you know, in many cases. Typically there's a dispatcher, but not everybody's, we typically don't have 3 or 4 people wearing these hats. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we may have people on this call that have several service managers, you know, several different dispatchers. And so the dynamics can be pretty broad here. So what I'd like you to do is really think about the role of the dispatcher and how can we separate those as much as possible, okay? And if not physically, at least mentally, okay? So the role of the dispatcher is to dispatch to maximize, right tech to the right call. And so we're going to get deeper into this and a little bit farther as to how we know what that person is. But the dispatcher's role is to maximize the opportunities we have. It's typically not generating the calls or booking the calls. That might be if you're wearing both of those hats, but the dispatcher's focus is, how can I make the most money today for the department? And the metric is, you know, average ticket. So we need to focus on getting the right tech to the right call. And that might not necessarily mean who's the closest, who's in that neighborhood. If we have, you know, it's getting the right tech to the right opportunity that they're best at. They have the right skill set for, they've got the right success rate on those types of calls, and who has the highest potential to maximize that particular call. We have to know who has the hot hand. The hot hand is the person that's really kind of doing well right now. And it's not unusual for us to have top performers that get into a slump, or maybe they're not really performing to their usual level of performance. So we need to look at that. One of the things that I did in my business was I re-ranked my technicians every single week to know who had the hot hand based on their performance, and whoever had the hot hand got the highest opportunity calls. As your performance went down, your opportunities went down. And of course, everybody had the way to earn their way back up the ladder to get back into the hot hands. But the reality of it is most of us go through some types of peak and valley, whether it be personal things that are going on in our lives, distractions, coming back from vacation, going to vacation, trouble at home, whatever it is, people go through slumps. And as a dispatcher, we really do need to be dialed into that. Who has the hot hand? And what does the data say? Because often we think we know who's got the hot hand, but in the reality, it's because maybe they did last year, or maybe they used to be really good at a certain call. And in our mind, they kind of still are, but the data doesn't always prove that. The dispatcher needs to own the flow of information, and everything goes in and goes out of the dispatch. That really is a critical hub within the business, and so the dispatcher needs to own and manage and communicate a lot of information throughout the day. And of course, the final component there is win the day. We talked about win the day on, I believe it was call 2, and what that means is, what is the number that we need to achieve on a daily basis to win the day? And it starts by looking at your budget, and it might be the budget for the business, might be budgeted by department, breaking that down to the technicians, but what is the number the business needs to hit on a daily basis? So if we took our monthly budget and we broke that down by how many working days we have, what is that number? And that number may change, if we were to fall behind on our performance on our PACE report throughout the month, and we might find ourselves a little behind budget, well then the number that we need to win the day is going to go up. But we need to know that. We need to know where we're at in relation to that benchmark. And it's just like a dashboard on your car. As we're driving, we need to know what speed we're going and how we're doing there. All right. Do we have any questions so far? All right. So if you want to raise a question, you can raise your hand on your control panel. Okay. All right. I don't see anything so far. All right. We'll keep going. The key metric for the dispatcher to win the day is average ticket. Average ticket is the key role of the dispatcher. So that's the total revenue of all calls divided by all calls ran by the techs. Okay, what is our average ticket? All right, that's the key metric. All right, now let's talk a little bit about the DSR manager's role. Okay, and again, I realize might be the same person wearing the same hat. The manager's role is to accept overbooking as an inevitability. And we're going to talk quite a bit about that on this call, about overbooking. And this becomes really critical when the CSR and the dispatcher are the same person, because the dispatcher is more likely to want to turn that faucet off and tell the CSR not to book any more calls. We're busy. Okay. And the DSR's manager, or whoever wears that hat, really needs to oversee this and continue to book the opportunity calls. And now, if we're booking these for first available, as we teach in the CSR school and in the dispatch schools, we're not going to promise these in time slots, but we'll come back to that too. But overbook. And a good way to look at overbooking is it's like playing poker. You don't stop when you get 5 cards in your hand. You continue to take more cards until you build the winning hand. And dispatching is really the same way. We want to have a handful of aces, okay? Not a handful of garbage that keeps the guys busy. That's not really the ultimate goal. And sometimes we work just to achieve that. I get it, but our goal is to get a handful of aces and get everybody on the best possible opportunity. And even if this comes down to running one call, one ace per day per tech, and they end up staying all day on that golden call, hey, that's a win. Okay, that's how you hit your budget. And the DSR manager is also responsible for achieving revenue goals. And there might be several departments involved in this. If you've got a plumbing goal, if you've got an HVAC goal, the DSR may own both of those numbers. Okay, do we have any questions so far? All right. So the key metric for a DSR manager is achieving budgeted revenue. So the obvious critical component of that is we need to know what that number is. And so if you're in charge of dispatch and you need to know what your number is. What is your number to win the day? And so a good place to go with that is to work with your, the owner, the general manager, and certainly your Next Star business coach can help you nail that down. But we need to know what the number is within our business on any given day so that we know where we're at. How can we win the day? Now let's talk about the service manager's role. And the service manager is responsible for accepting overbooking as an inevitability. You'll see that as a common thread for all three of these positions. We need to get more comfortable with accepting overbooking. And, it's not a very comfortable thing because when we overbook, that means there are calls that need to be moved or canceled. Nobody likes doing that. I understand that. But overbooking is the key to profitability. And I'm going to use a little bit more controversial subject, but look at airlines. Airlines have been in the news more recently because of overbooking. And, we sold two people the same seat, and then somebody has a scene on an airplane because we're dragging them off. And and that's a really good example of overbooking gone wrong. But it doesn't mean that the airlines are going to stop overbooking. What they're really working on is identifying how can we overbook better? How can we communicate that better? And how can we prevent the angry scene on the airplane that goes viral? So, and it's no different in our business. We need to overbook, but how we move those and how we handle those situations is the key. So we need to get better at that. But not overbooking is a key, is a recipe for not hitting our budget. The service manager is also responsible for achieving revenue goals. The service manager owns his department's number and maybe even the company's number, depending on what departments they're over. But the service manager is responsible for that number for his technicians to achieve the revenue goal for that department. The service manager is also responsible for recruiting, training, and motivating top talent. All right, and that's a huge challenge right now with our technician shortage that everybody I speak with across the country seems to face. There's a shortage of plumbers, shortage of electricians, shortage of HVAC technicians throughout the country, and that is a challenge. But we really can't take a passive role in that. And the service managers or owners that I speak with that really have figured this key out know that the key to being staffed is to devote a portion of every single day to recruiting. We need to actively recruit constantly, communicating with past employees, future employees, folks that interviewed with us. And I've got some great insight as to that I'd be happy to share with anyone on a one-on-one basis. And we also have Stefan Bush, our recruiting coach within Nexstar, that is just a tremendous asset. So if you're struggling with your staffing of your technicians, that's probably a good call to have scheduled. So you get involved with Stefan and tackle some of that knowledge and make sure that you're aware of all the resources that you have available to be staffed up. But so often I see us complaining about not having enough technicians, but we're really not doing anything about it. We're just kind of grumbling about it. So that's not going to get us there. Training our technicians so that we actually achieve the numbers. They're not, if we don't train them, if we don't properly motivate them, they're not going to hit those numbers. So training is a huge component of this. Do we have a consistent training program for our technicians? Do we talk to them on a weekly basis in meetings to have very specific service system training? Do we do technical training? Are we having one-on-one coaching sessions? And again, this is an area that I get pretty fired up about, and I'd be happy to have one-on-one conversations with anyone about these processes and how to get these in place. Are we riding with our technicians and getting out there and actually seeing what they do and, what are the opportunities we have to help them be all they can be? And motivation. Motivation should be a positive thing, to make our technicians, to help our technicians want to perform at a higher level, to be more comfortable performing at a higher level. And a lot of times it's not necessarily skill, it's motivation that's the missing ingredient there. Okay. And one thing I'd like to add on here now is culture. The top performing companies that I speak with within Nexstar really have one common thread. They have a positive culture. And if we're motivating our teams, they're excited about what they do. They go out there and they've got a positive attitude and they feel appreciated. That positive culture is a really, really critical piece. It's the X factor that's often missing in really getting the most out of our folks. So the culture within the business, and a lot of times this goes right directly back to the service manager, because people don't quit companies. They usually quit people. And a lot of times for our technicians, that person they're quitting is the service manager. So this is really a critical piece. And being staffed, being staffed you know, in many businesses may or may not fall on the service manager's role, but I always encourage service managers to get involved in this piece. Own the staffing of your department. Don't wait for the HR department to place the ads, or maybe the owner hasn't moved quickly enough on getting those ads out there. If you're the service manager, take the bull by the horns, own it, or at least work with the key people within the business to make sure this is happening and you're getting the results that you need, that you're involved in driving this equation. Because at the end of the day, these are your numbers. You own this. All right. Do we have any questions so far? Nothing yet? Okay. And if you're taking a moment to become comfortable with raising your hand on your control panel there, just feel free to ask and I'll come back. Okay. The key metric for a service manager is achieving the budgeted revenue for your service department. All right, so we've got our company goal, we've got our service department goal, and I'm going to use an HVAC department as an example. So the service manager may or may not be over the installation department. If they are, well, then they own the whole number if they're an HVAC manager. If you're the HVAC service manager and somebody else owns the installation goal, then your piece of that is going to be the service department. Typically, that's also going to include maintenances. All right, but whatever your budgeted revenue for the month is, that's your number. And if you're not sure what it is, again, work with your general manager, work with your owner, or work with your business coach and nail that piece down. What does it mean to be busy? Okay, I looked for a better slide for busy, and I really came back to this one because it's about as good an example as I could find for being busy. But we use that term all the time. Yeah, we're really busy. We're really busy. Well, are we really? What does that mean? Are we busy running maintenances? Are we busy with warranties? Do we have a lot of techs requesting days off or taking vacations this time of year? Or, gee, I don't know how that happened, but I've got 3 of my guys all scheduled to be on vacation the same week. Does that make us busy? Um, but but are we really busy? So you might fill the schedule with these types of things, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we're busy, and it doesn't mean that we're busy doing the right things. So these are important pieces that we know what we're busy with. And if we have a board full of maintenances and the gold nugget comes in, the 12-year-old air conditioner that's broken, or the mainline stoppage, do we have the bandwidth to be quick enough on our feet to take the things that are filler and move those and reschedule those? If the warranties are a problem, that's a whole nother area that are we doing anything to address those warranties? And I'd like to go down that rabbit hole for a minute, because warranties are really not productive time for the most part. So are we looking at why we have warranties? Are we looking for a pattern? Is this a training deficiency? Is it one technician that really kind of has a warranty pattern? And if so, what does he tend to get warranties on? Are we looking at that? Are we addressing that training need? But if we're continuing to run the same warranties day after day, week after week, and just kind of accepting that as being a problem without really looking at what is causing these warranties and addressing this, defining what the process is to stop this, that's insanity. We can't keep doing the same things over and over again. All right. And then vacations, really ties back into, personal time off, staffing, all those types of issues. And I understand there is a work-life balance that we need to achieve, okay? And the service manager really needs to look at that and regulate that, because, our folks have to have a balance in their lives. We want them to take vacations, but we also need to define when they take vacations and when it's good for the business to take vacations. as an HVAC technician, I knew within my business that I was never going to get a vacation during the summertime. That was a blackout period for our business, and if I was ever going to go on vacation, it would be during the winter, and that was my particular business. But that's what I was accustomed to. Um, so we need to look at some of these things and look in your business, because if it's a problem and it's affecting your dispatch abilities and your staffing, then we probably need to define what that process should look like. All right. Do we have any questions there? Okay. I don't see any hands. Who decides when you are busy? This is a great question. Is it the CSR? Oh, we're really busy. Is it the dispatcher? A dispatcher may believe that you're busy when there's one call on the board. Yeah, we're pretty busy today. You know, and I'm not saying dispatchers are bad or dispatchers don't want to work hard. It's usually been the experience that the dispatchers are the drivers within the business. Okay, but a dispatcher can also be the person that causes the CSR to not book calls or maybe not have the enthusiasm for booking calls. So we have to really look at that. And I've even seen examples where it was the technicians that decided we were busy. Yeah, don't book any more calls for me. I'm going to be on this call all afternoon. Don't take any more calls. That's very dysfunctional. So who decides when you're busy? It really should be the service manager, okay? Or the, the service manager who is communicating with the DSR manager, or the owner is communicating, through that pipeline. But it definitely needs to be a top level decision, because overbooking needs to happen. Okay. Not every call needs to happen today. It's a matter of prioritizing the calls and going back to the poker model that I talked about earlier. And I realize the balance here is we have customers that we make promises to. We have maintenance customers that deserve priority service, and that's a beautiful thing. That's a promise. That's a promise that we need to honor. Okay. So again, it goes back to how are we communicating that with them? How are we rescheduling that? Are we asking them in a positive way? Are we scripted for that? How we move a call and the words that we say really can make all the difference in the world between success and failure on that. And if you don't have scripting in place for how to reschedule a call and what that language should sound like, I would encourage you to reach out to our call center coaches, Tom Marriott and Tracy Robinson, and really take advantage of their wisdom, because they're great at helping you craft some scripting for that. But if we have customers that are without heat, without cool, have plumbing emergencies, most people are going to be pretty understanding that that is more of an emergency call, and we really need to take care of some of those folks first, just like we would if you were in that situation. So, but how we do it is a pretty important piece. But just because we took 50 calls today, it doesn't mean all 50 of those are going to run. Okay, we're going to do what's smart for the business. The service manager is responsible for maximizing opportunities and achieving budget, both short and the long range. And what I mean by that is you can run your technicians into the ground in the short range, and they're not going to be there to support you in the long range. If we overdo that, if we run them into the ground, the workload's too crazy because we haven't done a good enough job of staffing, or the culture's not good. There are a lot of things that can negatively affect this. So the service manager owns this position of really maximizing opportunities today, this week, this month, this year, okay? And that can really be a balancing act. And a lot of this really comes down to how well do we communicate with our teams? Do they feel good about what we're doing? Do they truly understand the needs of the business and where they fall into it? Do we understand their needs? And are we really picking I call it picking our battles, but when we have technicians that really have personal things in their lives that are important to them, we should accommodate them when we can. And there are going to be times where we can't, but a blanket, no can do, need you to work today, isn't always the right answer. So the service manager needs to be that psychologist, that motivator, that budgeter, that looks at his manpower and really, has some credibility in the bank with his technicians. I knew a very, very effective service manager who whose guys would just literally run through fire for them. And he would coach them through these situations, and they knew that he always had their back, and he knew that he cared about them as individuals. Um, and they also knew that when he asked them to take that late night call and they weren't going to get home till midnight, you know, he needs me to do it. I'm going to do it for him. You know, they didn't want to let him down. You know, and that was a great example of the mutual respect that we should have between our technicians and our service manager. You know, so be there for them, to support them, and have them in a position where they want to perform at that level. Keys to managing overbooking. Keep your options open. Overbooking equals profitability. So if we book 5 calls today, things are going to happen. Calls are going to fall off. Customers are going to call up and cancel. Maybe we didn't get out there quickly enough. You know, they got a phone quote from somebody else that looks better. Keep your options open. Overbooking equals profitability. So don't turn that faucet off, and don't let somebody else in the business turn that faucet off without you knowing about it. Don't rush to reschedule. Cancels and no-shows are going to happen. So, you know, just because a call comes in and it might be a lower priority, we don't need to reschedule that right now. We need to see what's going to happen, but we need to be proactive on our status calls. And Tom Marriott does a fantastic job of talking about this in school, and about don't wait till the end of the afternoon to call these customers and say, we're not going to make it there today. We have to be proactive in how we communicate with our customers, and don't lie. You know, if we say little Billy's grandmother died, or you know, our technician had a flat tire, you know, those are lies. And not only do they sound like lies, but you know, that can often catch up with you. And unfortunately, those can also manifest in negative returns for our business too. So, you know, honesty is the best policy. So be transparent. Communicate with them consistently. Inconvenience your customers as little as possible. All right. And look for ways to turn the negative into a positive. So I'm going to use the airline industry again. If an airline overbooks, what do they typically do? They offer you something. And it might be a free ticket. It might be money to take a later flight. And the more that need goes up, the more they make it worth your while. And so we may do some things like that for our customers too. Look for ways to turn a negative into a positive. Maybe that's a diagnostic fee, or if we're going to waive our diagnostic fee, you know, that helps. You know, typically that's something, when they do choose to do the work with us, we would have waived it anyway, so that's okay. Look for features, benefits. Maybe it's a free furnace. I'm sorry, filter. Not going to give away free furnaces. Look for a free filter. You know, something that cost us a few bucks might be a real positive thing there. So whatever it is, define that and know where to take that when the customer's upset about getting moved. All right, and hopefully we don't get that, but find a way to be positive and turn this move and this reschedule into a positive experience for the customer that they're okay with whenever possible. We should also define how frequently we have to move a customer. You know, what is acceptable within our business? You know, if we've got an SPP customer that, you know, we're calling for the 3rd time to move them, and, you know, they signed up for us because they thought they had priority service with us, well, that might not fly. Okay, so have a process in place that defines, when do we reschedule customers? How many times do we reschedule customers? What do we do for customers when we reschedule them? So these are important things to think about, because these conversations are going to take place when we overbook. Communicate with consistency with your DSR and DSR manager. And some of these, you know, as a service manager, the service manager's roles are very, very different. I talk to a lot of service managers within Nexstar, and, you know, I see managers that really are never in the office. They live in the truck. I see managers that never get out on ride-alongs. They live in the office, and they are the shot caller, you know, within the organization. I don't know if there's a position within Nexstar companies that is more diverse than the service manager. They wear so many they're structured so many different ways within the organization. So look at your situation and take what I'm saying here as, with a grain of salt. And if you're confused about where to take those roles, we can absolutely have some conversations about that. But um, I'm operating under the model that your service manager is going to spend some time out in the trucks doing ride-alongs on a couple of days a week. They're going to be involved in what's going on in the office to some degree, calling the shots, communicating with the dispatcher. There's got to be a balance of inside and outside, in my opinion. So some of the things that I think are best practices are the morning huddle. The service manager really should be having a communication with the dispatcher about what's on the board. What have we got on the call? How are our calls looking? What are our opportunities? Who's going where? Okay. We should be communicating throughout the day. We're looking at the calls, overbooking, status calls. We're communicating. And we should also touch base again at the end of the day. I typically did an 8 a.m. and a 3 p.m. and 11 a.m. huddle with my dispatcher every single day, because even though I was looking at my board all day long, I really wanted to touch base with that dispatcher and make sure that we were on the same page in our thinking and who was going where. Service manager should also be communicating with their techs to motivate and encourage them and know what they're doing throughout the day. All right. That communication throughout the day is really important for not only the culture, but just, it can be pretty lonely life for a service technician out there in that van. They're really on their own. They're really kind of a free agent out there. And sometimes, and I've been there, I was a service tech for several years. Sometimes we kind of feel like we're on an island out there. I don't even know if anybody's looking at what I'm doing out here. Now, that can be a good thing or a bad thing. So for a service manager, we really want to touch base with our guys consistently. And some technicians need a little bit more support than others, so we need to know who those techs are. But that motivation goes a long way. The simple phone call, Billy, you're going on a fantastic call. We've been out to this customer for several years. Got some good solid recommendations. Did you notice that within your work order? Yeah, got some great recommendations out there. All right. Got a great opportunity. Go out there and get them. And hey, if you want, get me involved if you want to, and I'll be happy to help you. Okay. So they know that you're looking. They know that there's an expectation there. This goes a long way. What are some of the things we should discuss with the CSR or DSR and DSR manager? Who has the hot hand? All right. And again, what do the metrics tell us? And if we're looking at our coaching and tracking, if we're looking at our dashboard, whatever reports that you look at within your business based on your software or your tracking, we should know who has the hot hand. And better yet, who has the hot hand on different opportunities. If we have a plumber that's, maybe he's not necessarily our ace in the hole technician, but boy, he's really killing it on water heaters. Well, then that's the guy that you want to get on the water heater opportunity. If you have a technician that's really doing a fantastic job of setting up tech turnover leads for our comfort advisors, he's the person, or that's the technician that we want to get on the opportunity for the turnovers on that old piece of equipment. Now, maybe that technician was hot 2 weeks ago, but really he hasn't turned a lead in the last week or two. He's not the hot hand anymore. Who is? What does the data tell us? So this is where our key performance indicators come in, and these are great pieces of information. Do we know what the opportunity calls are on the board? All right. And have we looked at those? And are we having that conversation with the dispatcher? Maybe we saw something that they missed. Maybe they saw something that we missed. But those communications of analyzing what are the opportunities. And I'm going to use an HVAC example. Are we capturing the age of the equipment? Do we know how old this call is? If we've got our top technician, our top turning technician going on a call, and we don't have age on that call, then that's a missing key piece of information, because you don't want to take your rock star and put them on a 3-year-old call that really is not going to have a turn opportunity. So we need to know what that is. So looking at that board with our dispatcher and really nailing down what's our game plan, what is our strategy, how are we going to maximize this day? Where is the comfort advisor or salesman that will support the opportunity call? And as I ran my board throughout the day, it was like playing a chess game. I know I'm getting my turning technician to the right opportunity. I'm also backing him up with the comfort advisor. Where's he at? He's on an estimate right now. He should be finishing that in about an hour. And I'm going to bring him over to this area so that he can back up my turning tech so we can get a live handoff. You know, we're driving this equation. And again, as a service manager, we're not the one necessarily pulling all the levers on this, but we should know in our head through our conversations with our dispatcher what's going on with these calls. You know, so these consistent check-ins throughout the day. What's going on with this call? Who's out there? How long has he been there? Where's our comfort advisor? Is he finished yet? Is he moving this way? These are important questions that drive the result of our dispatch board throughout the day. And another one, it would be staffing issues. You know, do we have a process that really regulates who has off and when they have off and who they're asking for time off, you know? And again, I've seen this get pretty out of control where the dispatcher's notifying the service manager, oh, by the way, you know, Tommy said he needs to get off at noon today. Well, why is that going to the dispatcher and not the manager? Okay, is there a lack of a process there? Did we know this? Did Tommy know this 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, 1 week ago? What is our process? And again, we might have to tell Tommy no, but we need to have a process in place that really defines when that should happen and who that goes through. So staffing issues. And again, it goes back to recruiting as well. Are we really staffed where we need to be? Have we devoted a portion of every day to recruiting? Are we driving this equation? What do our ads look like? Do we have ads placed? So again, service manager owns staffing for his department because he owns the results for it. Get rid of time slots. All right. Time slots are really the things those are the evil pieces that tend to paint us into the corner. So if we're promising these windows and our customers are expecting it, we're promising it, it really diminishes our ability to move these things in a smooth manner and do reschedules. But if we're booking our customers for first available opportunities, and then we're calling them back and communicating with them, you know, if we know it's going to be tomorrow, then communicate that with them early and often. But painting ourselves into these time slots might keep us busy, to use that B word again. It might keep us busy, but it might not be the right kind of busy that we need to maximize our opportunities. All right. What questions do we have so far? Feel free to raise your hand. Let me see. Do we have any hands up? All right. You've got a little hand icon, so if you want to raise your hand. Thought I had one. All right. And I can also unmute you, so if you have a question you'd like to discuss. There we go, Stephanie. Okay. Okay. Okay, so Stephanie, you'll get a pin, and so once you enter that pin on the call in, and then that'll allow me to unmute you. Okay. Or if you want, Stephanie, you can type in your question. Okay, we'll give Stephanie just another moment there. Okay, if anyone would like to give me a shout after this, or you know, pop me an email, feel free to do that. I'd be happy to have talk about this on one-on-one with any questions that you might have. All right, The next tap-in call will be by Heath Betts. That's going to be on Friday, August 18th, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, 10 Central. I don't know what Heath's topic is going to be yet, but I'm sure it's going to be fantastic. He's amazing. And that will conclude our tap-in today. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. And finish strong. I hope you have a fantastic July. All right. Bye now.